Hey everybody, Professor Moore here, and I have a challenge for you. I want to challenge you to watch 10 documentaries on the Israeli occupation and ethnic cleansing of Palestine. And I guarantee that after you watch these films, not only will you know more about this conflict and its long history, but you'll understand why it's so imperative for all Americans to stand in solidarity with Palestine and fight for the dignity and lives of the Palestinian people. Because it's our own government that is supporting and facilitating the Holocaust of the 21st century. Now, I know that it can feel obscene to seek out films depicting Palestinian suffering as Palestinians are currently suffering at this very moment. Over this past year, every time we open up our phones or look at a TV screen, all we see is Palestinian death and destruction. All we see is people being burned alive in their hospital beds and babies being pulled out from underneath the rubble. All we see are heroes and martyrs using their last moments on earth and their last breath to resist Israeli terror and violence before they too join the countless dead. Being constantly exposed to all of this death can be numbing, traumatizing, and enraging. But that's why it's so important to keep educating ourselves and others and to keep speaking up, so that we make sure when we say Free Palestine, it's not just a trend, but a movement that will never end until we finally see the justice that Palestinians have been denied for decades. These films that I'm going to recommend are so important because even though it's not hard to condemn genocide, the long history of this conflict is complex. And the more we know about this history, the easier it will be to spot Israeli lies and fight back against the overwhelming and inhumane propaganda being manufactured in this country from every corner. One of the reasons why I think these documentaries are so powerful is that it was actually watching a documentary on Palestine that originally got me interested in studying history. Before I watched this film, I had been planning on majoring in creative writing at college. However, after watching this documentary and learning more about Palestinian history, I realized that I wanted to dedicate my life to learning more about the history of the world and educating people on this history. So I changed my major, and I've never looked back. The film that made me want to study history was Tears of Gaza, released in 2010. The film covers the 2008-2009 Israeli bombing campaign in Gaza called Operation Cast Lead, and it focuses on the impact of this violence on Palestinian children. I firmly believe that this is one of the most important documentaries ever made, and it should be required viewing for everyone. I've never had such a visceral reaction to anything in my life. This film destroyed me. It broke me. It left me on the floor shaking and crying, and I didn't feel right for weeks after watching it. So if this is the reaction that I had to simply watching Israeli violence against Palestinians, how do you think it is for the people that have to live with this as a daily reality? This documentary shows that Israel's murderous violence is nothing new, and it's something that's been going on for decades. It's something that makes a mockery of justice and humanity. Every single American should watch this film to see what their government has been funding and supporting for years. The second film I want to recommend is the 2014 documentary Born in Gaza, that also focuses on how Palestinian children have been impacted by Israeli violence. This film follows several children in Gaza who have faced more hardship and violence than most people could ever imagine. And these are just children. Kids who should be worrying about going to school and playing with their friends, not trying to survive a bombing attack or navigating life after their parents have been murdered. The third film on the list is the 2004 documentary Death in Gaza, which also deals with the impact of Israeli violence on Palestinian children. During the filming, Israeli soldiers actually shot and killed the director James Miller, which is something that we've also seen recently with the killing of American activists in the occupied West Bank. The fourth film on the list is Five Broken Cameras from 2011. This is a documentary that was filmed by a Palestinian farmer depicting his struggles against Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. It's a remarkable film that highlights Palestinian resistance and resilience in the face of murderous settler colonialism. The fifth film on the list is Waltz with Bashir, a unique animated documentary by Israeli filmmaker Ari Folman, released in 2008. The film focuses on the 1982 Israeli war in Lebanon and deals with Israeli complicity in the Sabra and Shatila massacres committed by Lebanese Christian militias, where hundreds of Palestinian civilians were brutally murdered in refugee camps. Some people have accused this film of being too sympathetic to the Israeli Defense Forces, but I think it's an important meditation on Israeli violence and culpability. The sixth film is A World Not Ours, released in 2012, which focuses on Palestinians living in a Lebanese refugee camp. This film tells an important story of what happened to some of the more than 700,000 Palestinians that the Israelis drove from their land during the 1948 Nakba, and how they've struggled to find a true home ever since. The seventh film on the list is the 2012 documentary The Gatekeepers, which features interviews with 6 former heads of the Israeli security service, Shin Bet. What's so remarkable about this film is just how many Israelis who used to be in positions of power who have come to see the occupation and obliteration of Palestine as an immoral evil that must end. The eighth film on the list is the Oslo Diaries, released in 2018, that covers the Oslo peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians in the 1990s. This film provides an excellent political history of this conflict and focuses on the role of Benjamin Netanyahu in pushing Israeli politics further to the right. The ninth film on the list is The Occupation of the American Mind from 2016. This film is an amazing exploration of the Israeli effort in the United States to whitewash and distort their occupation of Palestine. This film does a great job of exposing the indoctrination of Americans, and it focuses on the key role that the mainstream media plays in downplaying Israeli violence and dehumanizing Palestinians. The 10th film on the list is a recent documentary called Israelism that follows the story of American Jews who start to question the lies and propaganda they were told about Israel growing up. This is another film that should be required viewing for everyone. It does an amazing job of showing how Israel is built on one big lie, and how many American Jews never learn the real history of Palestine or see that Israel is built and sustained on Palestinian suffering. These 10 films show the history of Israel's decades-long war against the Palestinians, and they should be required viewing for everyone. One final film that I'll mention is a recent Al Jazeera Investigates documentary on IDF war crimes in Gaza. After watching these 10 documentaries and then watching this recent film, you'll see that the Israeli violence in Palestine is nothing new. This has been Israel's strategy from the very beginning. It's always been about erasing and eliminating the Palestinian people. And even though we can often feel powerless to help, we have to do everything to make sure that they never accomplish their goal. I can't recommend these films enough. In fact, I'd like to see all of these films playing at college campuses across the country. I'd like to see a free Palestine film festival on every single college campus in America, where these films are shown and discussed and people can come together and educate each other and organize in support of Palestine. Knowledge is power, and no matter how many Palestinians Israel kills, Palestine will never die.